Live updates. In dire assessment, Pentagon calls Russian troops ready to go now. In its most dire assessment yet, the Pentagon said on Wednesday that 80% of the 190,000 Russian troops and separatist forces in or near Ukraine are now in combat-ready positions, and that a full-scale military assault is most likely imminent. They are ready to go now if they get the order to go, a senior Defense Department official told reporters. The official, speaking on the condition of anonymity to describe Russian military operations in broad terms, said that all the forces the United States expected Moscow to assemble in the Ukraine crisis are now in place, positioned 3 to 30 miles from the Ukrainian border, if not already in the country's contested east. They have uncoiled and are ready to go, the official said, noting that it is still up to President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia to give the final order to launch an attack. US, NATO and European Union officials said on Tuesday that Russian forces had started rolling into the regions of eastern Ukraine controlled by Kremlin-backed separatists, which Mr. Putin said he was recognizing as independent. President Biden called the move the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Among the military options available to Mr. Putin are an offensive into areas still under Ukrainian control that are claimed by the separatists, or a much broader, nationwide attack on Ukraine, which would trigger the largest war in Europe since World War II. Pentagon officials say Russian forces have been preparing for months for such a large-scale assault, and are now in position to carry it out. That attack would probably include missile salvos, airstrikes, special forces operations, an amphibious assault and ground troops, and could begin at any time, the official said. The Defense Department official echoed Mr. Biden's assessment that Russia had begun an invasion of Ukraine in the eastern territories of Donetsk and Luhansk, but the official said he did not have details on the precise numbers or locations of the troops in the separatist-controlled areas. Washington. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, on Wednesday defended President Biden's approach to imposing sanctions on Moscow amid bipartisan calls for him to impose more crippling penalties on top Russian financial entities and officials. Pressed at her weekly news conference at the Capitol about whether Mr. Biden should enact harsher penalties, Ms. Pelosi said she was confident that he was doling out swift and severe sanctions. The president has full knowledge of what impact these sanctions will have and is fully ready to go all the way, Ms. Pelosi told reporters, later adding, "We haven't seen the depths of these sanctions yet." Hours later, Mr. Biden announced that his administration would impose sanctions on Nordstrom 2, the Russian gas pipeline running to Germany, a step that Republican lawmakers as well as some Democrats had long demanded. Ms. Pelosi suggested that the timing of the sanctions so far, including against 3 sons of senior officials close to President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia and 2 state-owned banks, had been slowed by consultations with other NATO allies. Some countries had to take a little longer to get to that place because of the exposure they have from sanctions or the process they have politically in their countries, she said. If you have a unified approach, why would you depart from that? Her comments came as some rank-and-file lawmakers in both parties have urged Mr. Biden to enact more severe penalties against top Russian officials, and as a bipartisan group of senators considered a multi-pronged legislative response to Russian aggression that would provide emergency funds for Ukraine's defense and weaken Moscow's economy. But on Wednesday at the Capitol, Ms. Pelosi and the Democrats flanking her pushed back on the clamor, insisting that Mr. Biden's leadership had brought NATO countries closer together and that additional, biting sanctions was still to come. If you've got a dictator like Putin, who amasses 100,000 or 200,000 troops on the border of a much smaller, much weaker country, and is determined to invade, then short of going to war with Russia, embarking on this brutal package of sanctions is the most effective way to raise costs on Russia, said Representative Adam B. Schiff, Democrat of California and the chairman of the Intelligence Committee.